Hey.
Thanks for doing this at the last minute.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'm glad you guys have time. I've actually been trying to hound you guys down for like the past month or two, trying to get an interview. So I appreciate you guys having time.
It's my fault.
It's your fault? Yeah, I mean, I was,
fault,
yeah, I was gonna blame it on you originally, Sasha, because I mean, let's be honest, you know, and this is something I'm gonna come up to in the conversation, so I'll just let it be at that. So, well, yeah. But I really do appreciate it, guys. I actually have listened to every single one of the podcasts so far, except for the final. I've not listened to the last episode that you guys have just done. So I'm not going to ask anything about that particular episode, but just in general about the show itself. So my first question, and pretty much you guys can both kind of answer this as you may. It seems like about 10 years ago, you were pretty much considered boring or a nerd or something if you listened to NPR or podcasts. But now it seems like, you know, these things are popping up everywhere and everyone has a podcast now. Why do you think this has become such a transition into this phenomenon as of late?
I personally think technology and information just moves so fast that it's just sort of a way for real hardcore fans to keep in touch and, you know more about you or your interests. And I think for me, being able to relate to fans, and I hate using that word, but fans, admirers, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
being able to relate to people and share things that people like has always been something that's really important to me. So I think this is just an extension of that, and it's just been really fun. And I think you can also get away with a lot more in podcasts than you can in other mediums, and that's also a relief, especially when we have comedians on the show.
True.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's obvious about the whole situation is we get to share the same stage with, you know, all the other podcasts. Yeah, everyone's on iTunes, and if you know where to look, you can, you know, you're in the same space. But we don't have to, you know, go by anyone else's playbook. It's still an independent thing, and it's whatever we want it to be, which is very cool.
Yeah. So like the original, like this concept is so like original in its own because it's you guys are talking to people and you're getting deep tissue massages at the same time. And even when I'm explaining this to people who've not heard the podcast, they just don't believe me until I like strap them down and make them actually listen to an episode because they just don't fathom how anyone can get a massage and have a conversation at the same time. So I guess with it being mentioned before that David is kind of more of the guy who was doing the massages. Where did the original concept for this podcast come from?
It's just a hybrid. I had been talking for a few months about doing a podcast about movies, and David is one of my closest friends here in Los Angeles, and we're always hanging out, shooting the shit, and he's always telling me about this great massage he had. He comes over one day and he said, "Oh my God, you know, when I get massages, I talk a lot of shit to my masseuse, and it's great because she doesn't take it personally." And she said to me today, "You know, David, you should record yourself getting massages because you're really funny." And he said, "So I had this great idea. We should do a podcast if you want one, and we'll combine my love for massages and our mutual love for movies, and we'll do this." And so that's how it was really born. And
Okay.
it's kind of more this very strange concept that's really a lot of fun.
And what's intriguing to me is like I get to say, you know, I get to sit here on every episode with one of my best friends,
Right.
Getting massage,
Right.
and we get to invite whoever pops into our head, and you know, half the time they say yes. So
Okay.
we think, oh, I really love to sit down with, you know, this week we have Dave Foley coming up. I'd love to sit down with someone from Kids in the Hall,
Right.
and get massaged. It's like a by invitation only, you know, a fun, unique experience.
Yeah, and that's actually leads into the next question was like that selection process because when I was first given the PR information about the show, I'm thinking, okay, it's coming to me. I'm a horror movie guy, so I know the name David because of Would You Rather, and of course, who doesn't know Sasha? So I mean, this is something that I can definitely latch on upon. But then when I started seeing like some of the list of the people that you had on the show, I'm like, well, wait, this is not just movies. This is not just horror. This is a little bit more than that. So how are you guys able to seriously sit there and say, this is who we're going to have on the show and this is who we're going to target to have on the show?
How do we do that? How far we get most of that?
Well, it's an evolving process.
Okay.
There's no definitive answer, but there's things we do like. We like like-minded people. We want to talk to other artists or other people who, like our listeners, entered this business from being not in it.
Right.
And hear their journeys, and we like to be inspired by people's paths. And I think I've been pitched a few people on like reality shows, and I've sort of told Sasha, like, well, that doesn't seem like fun because I don't really care where they come from.
Right.
But when someone's like serious about their craft, I think that excites us. And and we are excited about them. Like Dave Foley was one of those people where we were like, oh my gosh, we love this person's work, and we used to just sit down and get rubbed down with him. Yeah.
So the intro is one of my favorites because you guys.
It's usually us. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
It's us just sitting together. It's just us sitting together and saying, who would be a cool idea?
Right.
Who? Oh yeah, that'd be great. Put him on the list. Mark Borchardt was one of those people. It's not like his movie, the documentary American Movie came out in 1999.
Right.
I think it's one of knocking out with Penny West. We want to have an hour of our lives with that man.
Awesome. Yeah, and it seems like what I was about to say was, you're kind of speaking about like kind of on the moment, spontaneous of guest selection. Was the deep tissues thing that you guys do at the very beginning of the show kind of spontaneous too? Because it kind of has that feel to it, where you guys are just kind of like deep tissues.
Yeah.
Like it's hilarious. It's hilarious. Like, and I could just tell, like, and every single time I listen to one of your episodes, I find myself doing it with you guys, and I know it's coming up. So that kind of spontaneous thought too. What's that?
We were driving to the studio for the first episode, and we sort of just came up with that on the way.
Now, speaking of driving, Sasha, this leads into kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of the conversation. There seems to be always something going on with you before you do one of these episodes. You've been in like car accidents and your back is all thrown out of whack and you gotten, just problems here and problems there. It's like, are you finding that when it's time for you to step on and do the show that outside of the massage, this is some type of therapy for your day-to-day existence in deep tissues, a safe zone for you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's kind of been something that's nice to fall into for an hour and get away from it all because it's just been, it's been a tough 2 months for me.
Right. I mean, but am I right? It seems like a lot of stuff's been going on with you.
I think in a recent recording, I literally said to her, "What is it with you?"
Right. Exactly.
I think 2014 is my down year.
Uh-oh.
There's just something strange about this year that doesn't let off for me.
Okay. Well, we'll be pushing it correct into 2015 then. So, now.
That's right.
So tell me about the setup. Like, are you guys using the same masseuses every single time, or is this at one particular location? Like, where is this all taking place? Is this a studio and you just like randomly bring these ladies in here? Like, how is this set up?
Yeah, we record in the same studio every week,
Okay.
and we've used the same masseuses, with the exception of one time. I think one of the girls was already booked, and we kind of scheduled the podcast very last minute. So we brought another guy in who's a friend of the women we use. So definitely been all in the family. It's nice because I think we said this to each other a couple weeks ago. You know, it even feels like the masseuses are kind of starting to open up and getting used to the format a little bit, and they're
Okay.
You know, they're having a little more to say than they did at the very beginning.
Yeah, they're becoming a little bit more part of the show.
Personality. Yeah. And, you know, so it's nice. The ladies we like, and me and Sasha usually stay with our favorite, you know, too, and there's their friend who does all the guests. And then we have a guy named Joe who will fill in whenever they can't make it, but he's only been needed once.
Okay.
So it is. It's sort of like you know the same 7 people because we have William in the booth who can chime in when he wants. And, it's really surreal because you know you think you'd either be you know a podcast is usually someone's kitchen table or you know if you're lucky you know a nice converted office. But you know we're in a rock and roll recording studio.
Sweet.
It's got the bed set up and private. Yeah.
That's awesome. Enjoyed the episode.
Yeah.
The episode with Jonathan Neal Brown from Kid Cannabis. It seems as if most part of that particular episode, he was kind of interviewing you guys a little bit more than you were interviewing him. Especially when he started talking to Sasha about how all his little lady friends are like even more happier than his guys friends are that he was speaking to you. But have you guys had any favorite guests so far?
Jonathan was definitely a lot of fun. He just had a lot of energy, and that can be something difficult to maintain when you're distracted getting a massage. But Dave Foley and Andy Dick were also great. I mean, it's really hard to choose, but
Yeah, we have Andy Dick.
Dave Foley on.
We have Andy Dick coming up pretty soon down the road in the near future, and he was definitely someone who I spent a lot of energy worrying about this showing up, but he did, and he was very comfortable, and he gave us a really great show. You know, he went to really absurd places, and he went to really deep places that you wouldn't expect.
Oh, nice.
That was a great one. I like talking to everybody, obviously, but then there's those interesting conversations where you don't think you're going to go, like with Rodney Asher. We talked about sleep paralysis for like half an hour.
Yeah, for sure. I like that conversation with the shadow people and everything. That was a great conversation.
Yeah, and it makes you think about who else you'd like to talk to. Like what other people have like just fringe conversation you're not used to having. You know. Mm-hmm.
So, has there been any thoughts to expand the show anymore, like possibly adding some type of a video or anything to it? Because that seems to be kind of the trend with a lot of podcasts is they start off, as your general basic podcast, and then eventually somebody will add a cam or something like that. And then with you guys being as known as you are, obviously I think it would help propel the show even more. But just have you guys had any thoughts on any types of future additions to expand the show more?
I do too. I think, the fun of it is that people don't get to see,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it leaves more up to your imagination and the setting that we're in,
But I mean, you would think the same thing about...
last weekend.
True. But I mean, you would think the same thing about sports talk radio. And I mean, you look on TV and you got the Dan Patrick Show and ESPN, all their guys have their own shows. I was just kind of thinking maybe it might add to a certain other type of appeal to the show, like being able to kind of see the girls and stuff like that as well. But I mean, yeah, I understand the mystique also is a great thing about the show as well.
So David had a funny idea. Last weekend I was DJing at a resort, and he said, "You know what you should do when you travel? You should say, I host a podcast called Deep Tissues, and we'll review your spot if you give us massages." I said, "Okay. That'd be nice to have like the exotic version."
Right.
I don't mind. Yeah, I think there's room in the future. I don't think we're going to do it immediately, but as time goes on and this show evolves, to have segments maybe and do field segments where we visit a spa in a faraway land and talk about it or something local, and maybe we get to find some sort of hybrid of travel and wellness
doing a Comic-Con panel.
Yeah.
And then being on like the massage chairs you see at a mall
Mm-hmm.
or out on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Being in one of those, that way we're not flat down, but we can still have conversations, yet we won't be looking at anybody, and that would just be really ironic.
It would be awesome too.
I think if we ever do anything publicly as far as this podcast, massage chairs must.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think you guys will probably find a bunch of sponsors. But well, guys, my time is up, and I really, really appreciate it. Like I said, I've been really, really enjoying the podcast so far, and I truly look forward to seeing the David Foley episode. I loved Kids in the Hall. One of my favorite episodes is the earring. Whenever the guy's cheating, and he shoves the earring in his earlobe to act like it's